there's always like exceptions, right, to every rule. Like when people are on there, like this could never work for me. You know what Thatch has done, and it's like he started with $100 in a suitcase. You know, came over from Vietnam, was living in Section 8 housing, and like did living with host families and all that kind of stuff. And it's like if you I don't think they know a lot of the background, right? Like they're just
Well,
kind of
true.
they're kind of thinking that he just started with a silver spoon or something, but I don't know.
Yeah, they
It's,
see the car and they just think, okay, it's just another, greedy landlord
yeah.
investor. And welcome to The Breakthrough with Stephen Husted, the show that takes you behind the scenes with successful entrepreneurs, real estate investors, and other movers and shakers in the business world. In each episode, we'll sit down with our guests to explore their personal and professional journeys, including the challenges they faced, the breakthrough moments that propelled them to success, and the strategies and the tactics they used to get there. Get inspired by new ideas and strategies and get to know our guests on a deeper level. Join us for candid conversations, powerful insights, and plenty of breakthrough moments. Please help us grow by subscribing and sharing the podcast, and welcome to the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Breakthrough with Stephen Husted. Today we've got a special guest joining us, Ian Love. Ian is a real estate expert who's been flipping houses and building really cool dadoos in Seattle. He's got some great stories about his journey from coaching youth basketball to crunching numbers at Ernst & Young. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. We're diving into some real gems today, like the secrets of maximizing margins with dadoos and how Ian manages 20 units without losing his mind. Plus, we're going to chat about his strategy for keeping tenants happy and avoiding turnovers. It's all about playing the long game, folks. Ian also has some thoughts on the wild world of social media and how a simple 1-minute video can spark all kinds of debates. You won't believe the stuff people say in the comments. So if you're ready to learn, laugh, and maybe even rethink your real estate investment strategy, stick around. It's going to be a good one. Let's get into it. All right, buddy. Thanks for jumping on. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I honestly didn't want you on right away. I wanted to be in contract first.
Oh, I know. Well, we could do another one.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. I'm like, because Angel was asking, are you going to have Ian on? You should have Ian on. I'm like, well, I don't want to have Ian on yet. We haven't got into contract because I want to talk about that whole scenario. But
Right.
I guess we can talk about somewhat of what's been going on.
Yeah.
That'd be a good thing to chat about. I'm really curious to kind of your backstory on your first investment properties.
Yeah.
And, just I want to know that. And I also want to understand your first few jobs you had growing up.
Okay.
This has been a question I've been asking people lately.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like what were those jobs, those stepping stones that you had growing up? When we start there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they were much of a stepping stones to anything, but they were jobs.
A lot of learning lessons.
I mean, if you go way back, I was like a youth basketball coach. I was a big basketball guy growing up, so that kind of consumed a lot of my my time in terms of playing in high school. Played varsity, so that kind of took up a lot of my time, kept me out of trouble, all that stuff. Growing up, and then my first real job, though, other than like camp counselor type of thing, was at Target. So I worked at Target for a summer, and then I also worked at Macy's for a summer. So those were like my two first, I guess full-time jobs, summer jobs. And then first coming out of college, my first job was actually public accounting. So I was in Big Four. I worked at Ernst & Young, which is like a public accounting firm. For those of you listening that are familiar with accounting and tax, hopefully not too many of you. But yeah, so I did that for a number of years, and that's kind of how I started my career. So yeah, Target and Macy's weren't really a stepping stone into public accounting, but
they were the first jobs.
Yeah,
the first ones
for sure.
So accounting and QuickBooks and all that stuff, I always talk about this on the podcast that, it's the one subject I stay clear from. I make it very clear to all my business partners too. Like, hey, I will do X, Y, and Z. These are the things I'm not doing at all.
Yeah.
And it's this. Like, so I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I'll analyze deals, but I am not doing accounting. This is not my thing. So I'm sure, run your own accounting for your properties and your business.
Yeah.
I would,
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I did for a long time. So now I actually outsource. I use the company here in,
Oh, cool.
Kirkland. It's a little bit on the pricey end, but like you said, you've got to eventually move on from doing everything yourself, even if, that thing might be something that you could technically be doing.
Right.
But ultimately it's just not worth it anymore to be doing my own taxes.
Do you feel like you catch more, you're more proficient at catching things that are maybe need some questioning or any kind of issues within,
For sure.
prepping for your taxes? Do you catch stuff
Yeah.
that you're like, hey, things that I probably would not catch? You're probably catching that.
Yeah. I mean, early on, it's like anything, right? I would equate it kind of to like property management, right? I started out managing a lot of my own properties. I still do. And then, if you don't want to be the one managing your own properties, you can hire a property manager, but then you still have to manage the property manager, right? You're not just handing over your taxes and they just magically appear and then you don't have to do anything. You shouldn't, it's not like you don't have to review them or at least spot check to make sure that things are going right. You want to at least be that second set of eyes. So that's really helped me. I've definitely, spotted things, cost segregation, stuff like that are planning opportunities, even where I've had prior tax preparers not even identify those or, not really see that. So now it's really important for me to have kind of like a tax planning team in addition to just somebody preparing your taxes. So,
Yeah, they need to be separate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that you have an implemented plan for the year. Like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be doing X, Y, and Z in your business, and then this can do this, or maybe you add this in there, and then the other person just takes care of
Yep.
preparing them. And yeah, definitely not my favorite.
Yeah.
It's definitely not my favorite, but you'll start. I think the funny part about it is it might not be your favorite, thing to do in your business.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you start getting hit with huge tax bills, it becomes something that you focus
Yeah.
on a lot, right? Like
Oh yeah.
really quick, you start going, oh, I made all this money. Oh my God, they took half of it, So you start to really try to figure out how to play the game better, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, if you're saving 20 or 30% on taxes every year, that 20, 30%, you're automatically 20 to 30% ahead of everybody that you're competing with, that doesn't have those types of tax benefits or that tax planning strategy in place. So, you might, just even if you don't make anything on that, you just put in a bank at, 5% or whatever, you're, 30%, 35% ahead of everybody else just by doing that. So that supercharges your investments because then you can take that, put it into more property, more investments. That kind of starts that flywheel of,
So it's like compound.
yeah, exactly.
Don't you find it funny on social media when you make these type of videos, how fast somebody will blow you up on like discredit what you're trying to
Oh
tell
yeah.
them? But it's like, look, it's a 1 minute video. If you're taking a 1 minute video that serious, especially because that 1 minute video is could can go in so many different directions pertaining on the person that's taking on that video.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's funny. Like, they'll just roast you in the comments over something that maybe it's true, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I
You ever
mean,
notice that?
context is very important, right? And you can't always get the full context in a 1 minute video. Or maybe, there's people that will, talk bad about like the real estate professional designation, or like, I can't do that when I'm a full-time employee, or, you're not going to be able to offset your earned income from your job because of this and that, and finding all these excuses for why they can't do it. But like, just having the knowledge that that opportunity is out there for me triggers, how can I make that work for myself? Right. Whereas a lot of
Right.
people are like, that will never work for me. I'm just going to go talk shit on the internet and say like that because that doesn't work for me. It can't work for you too. So like, it's just kind of how you take in information, right? Like you can either be optimistic about it and like go figure out how it's going to work for you and how you can apply that to your own life, even if it's not now, even if it's 5 or 10 years from now, you can start like laying the groundwork. Or you can just put your head in the sand and act like everything that everybody says is a lie and it's impossible. Um,
Yeah,
so pick
it's
your
true.
pick your approach.
Yeah, and I think these little 1 minute videos they're like teaser videos in a lot of ways. They're basically just giving you a thought that then you just jump online, do some research, contact some people, and figure out, does it work for me?
Right, for sure.
It's not an end all be all,
Right.
and I think that's a big problem. You can't pack it all in there on a 1 minute video, so it leaves it really open for people to kind of discredit what you're trying to say,
Yeah.
even if you're really I have to hold back sometimes, like lately,
Yeah.
because I think because you and I connect, well, we talk, we're newer on social media, like watching videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we comment, so then Instagram gives us more of each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if that works for me, but
Yeah.
I know I see a lot of your stuff where people who I followed 2 years ago that might be investors, I barely see their stuff. I actually have to go to their profile to actually see what's updating, what they're doing,
Interesting.
which is
Yeah.
pretty interesting. But I know right now it's you, Vena, and Thatch.
Yeah.
And the comment sections are just hilarious, man. They're just,
Yeah.
and I, at some point I look, especially with like Thatch, I kind of trip out when people are just, going crazy in the comment section. Like, will you step back and take in what this guy is actually doing?
Mm-hmm.
He is giving you blueprints, and you're just want to discredit it, knock it down, talk all the shit you want to do,
Yep.
where you could be learning something.
Right.
And I mean, it's funny, and it's funny. It's just like, it's free information.
Right.
And is there a business model behind what he's doing? Yes. Does he show his cars and the cars that he rightfully deserves?
Mm-hmm.
He earned them. He's worked his ass off.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's just kind of, I don't know. It's kind of fun. I hold back. Like sometimes I want to jump in, like,
Yeah.
just go crazy, but I'm just like, oh, I got better things to do.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, there's always like exceptions, right, to every rule. Like when people are on there, like this could never work for me. What Thatch has done, and it's like he started with $100 in a suitcase. Came over from Vietnam, was living in Section 8 housing, and like did living with host families and all that kind of stuff. And it's like if you I don't think they know a lot of the background, right? Like they're just kind of they're kind of thinking that he just started with a silver spoon or something, but I don't know.
Yeah, they see the car and they just think, okay, it's just another, greedy landlord investor, and he's flaunting his stuff. But I think people are quick to kind of shoot off comments without really understanding backstories and how much work goes into getting where you want to be. And that's a lot of things about investors in general. People look up to some of them, like, I'll never get there, but they have to understand that they've also put decades in to get there. Like, sit back, give yourself a little grace, start, get going on that process, whatever that is, because there's so many different debates too online. I was noticing something about Vena was talking about, she only wants to invest in Washington, in more appreciating, and that triggered all the Midwest cash flow investors to kind of, clap back a little bit. And it's like, it's not a one size fits all.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you can only afford to jump into a Midwest market or whatever market, so be it. It's not, it's just about getting going.
Yeah.
Because once you get going, you start to see the inner workings behind being an investor, and you start to learn all those little skills. Like, oh, and it could be the most simple thing about money.
Right.
Like, oh, I can get money from a hard money lender to rehab this. So I only really need to get out of pocket 20 grand. I thought I needed 120 grand to get going.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you figure that out as time goes on when you start to jump into it. And it could be off that really crappy, small little investment property. And, instead you're holding back because you're, pulling information from 20 other people that, can have different opinions because everybody's on different journeys.
For sure. You can
You know?
never compare your level, 1 to somebody else's level 100, right?
No,
So
no. You got to take some of their, you got to take their, like, extract that information they're giving to you and just kind of like hold it back.
Totally. Yeah.
For that next time.
Yeah. Create your own philosophy, right?
Totally. I mean, hey, you, back to that, let's go to that limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
You kind of checked me when we were together in Seattle. We were, cruising around, and, I was talking to you about what's going on in California. Like, hey, I'm going to start here, but California, it's going to start. I keep comparing the two. We're definitely not there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, well, we're not gonna be able to pull this off like this. And you're like, dude, like, there goes your limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Like, and then you showed me that one property that was in between two houses that had the driveway.
Right.
And I went, oh yeah, that can be done.
Yeah.
That can be done. And now it's not even now we're looking at stuff and trying to figure this out. We're just not getting a very clear picture from the city, like what we can really do and what we can't do. Like they're almost trying to take away some of the things like SB9.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they're kind of backtracking a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
It's only a matter of time, though, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think the problem is, one thing is I don't want to get stuck building, taking on the house and playing that scenario where it's like, okay, we're going to break even on the main house, but we're going to make all this money off the ADU.
Yep.
And then that doesn't happen, because then that ADU is really not worth that much.
Exactly. Yep.
You know what I mean? It's not a beneficial scenario. Maybe you can rent it out, but so yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
You can just keep, playing in the Seattle playground for a little while longer and wait for the right time over there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it kind of worked out for a reason this way to, go up there and do. Speaking of that, so what's been like a couple months? We've been searching for a couple months, probably. Not a lot of inventory, a lot of competition, a lot of different variables. It's not as straightforward as like buying a single family home and just fixing up the house and flipping it or holding it. There's a lot of other little factors that go behind your quote unquote first deal.
Mm-hmm.
We've been looking. We wrote one offer. Thought I was going to be your neighbor.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. Somebody came in, obviously a little bit higher. I wonder if you think they paid cash too?
I think so. I think they were a 2-week close and a little bit higher offer.
Right off their initial offer, and with that escalation clause.
Yeah, so we'll find out soon what that actually closes for, but yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a little bit different than the flip market. You do have to exercise a little bit more patience. You've got higher margins in these deals. What Stephen and I are talking about right now is there's a law in Seattle that allows you to actually build 3 homes on one single family lot and sell them all separately. So it's called the ADU DADU law. So additional dwelling unit and a detached additional dwelling unit. So in Seattle, you can have a single family home, an ADU and a DADU all on one single family lot, sell them separately. And because you're able to do that, you're actually able to extract a ton of margin on these deals. So one thing to remember, and that I try to remind Stephen and clients that I work with, is, it might take us a couple months to find a deal, but you really don't need a lot of them to make a huge impact to your portfolio and to your earned income, if you're going to flip them or sell them, because the margins on these things, you can build the ADU or DADU for around $350,000 to $400,000. And in Seattle right now, they're selling from anywhere from $700,000 to $900,000, depending on the specific location. So, you're talking about $300,000 to $500,000 of equity, obviously pre-tax for everybody's looking, but gross margin on these deals, which, you do one of those a quarter, that's close to 1.2 to 2 million on just 4 deals. So it's like it's a whole nother level in terms of, what you would normally expect from like a flip where it's maybe 50 to 100 grand margin. This is like five flips or 10 flips in one deal. So, um, it goes back to the mindset thing too, right? Because if it can take you 3 months to find a deal, you start getting a little anxious. You want to just pull the trigger on something. You want to go buy something, but you got to remember, like, it's more important to find the right deal, something that is going to be a clean process, great margin, easy. You'll have flexibility on the back end to either sell it, or if you want to keep, ADU or the DADU, or you have the option on the back end to keep or sell both of them. So I have a lot of clients that are actually just selling off the front house and keeping the back as a rental, because they also rent for $3,500 to $4,000 a month. The ADUs do. So yeah, just a nod for Steven to just be patient. We're going to find you the right deal, and you're going to make a lot of money. So don't worry.
I had that conversation with Ann Curry, when I was talking to her about the Tacoma market. I was like, hey, this is kind of how I operate. I can move quick, or I can sit back. I'm not going to just buy to buy.
Mm-hmm.
I think now where we are with rates and just where the market is, it's a little different than it was like 2019,
Yeah.
where you could kind of take a little bit more risk on,
Yeah.
and you could even be in a project for longer and be okay because the rates were low. There
Yeah.
was just so many different ways that you could screw up and be okay. And I don't feel like that's the scenario. So being patient is a good thing, and then we've looked at a lot of deals, and it's funny, the one that I really liked, I knew that street because you drove me on the street.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a good understanding of the property itself. I knew that alleyway because I was on that alleyway.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm comfortable here. And I know that you know it because you basically live on the same street and could look at it. So it all
Yeah.
made sense. It all made sense.
For sure.
And we were aggressive too. We went quick. Like, we didn't mess around, went over the weekend. I think we wrote the offer,
Yeah.
but then they knew it too. They're like, okay, we
Yeah.
can, let's get some people in the doors. Somebody's going to step up a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we can do on the next one is tighten up that expiration date, right? Like, generally, I've had it happen both ways, where a same day expiration kind of rubs the sellers the wrong way, or they're like, if you're in a multiple offer situation, they don't like the one that puts the pressure on them to sign that day. They might take the other offer instead, because it's just kind of the approach you take there, being a little bit more aggressive. But I've also had it happen, and in this case, it could have been a benefit to have that same day expiration, because by having a next day expiration, they were able to, have that extra day to let more offers come in, or hit the phones and see what else they can bring to the table. So, you know, it's just a strategy that we can kind of evaluate next time too, and see if it makes sense to do that. But
Yeah. And that escalation clause was
yeah,
another scenario, which I wasn't really bothered by that part.
yeah,
I just wish did you think that the listing agent just didn't want the complexity of a counter and trying to figure out like the whole escalation? He just didn't want to deal with it. It was almost like, hey, I got this in front of me. They're going to pay more no matter what by $5 to $10,000.
yeah,
Let's just get them up. Probably.
yeah. I mean, what I think happened, and what they had an escalation. They told us they had an escalator. So for us, when we have a net offer or a straight up offer at a certain price, um, if the other person has an escalator, but there's no other offer, then you're if you go up, then you're basically just escalating the other person, but you're not really, you're basically putting yourself into a bidding war, but you're also helping the seller get a higher price. Whereas by not playing ball with them, I think what happened was the agent had to go to the other seller or the other buyer and say,
Yeah.
can you just offer your max, on that escalation? So like if they went up to like 800 on an escalator, they probably were just like, hey, we've got this other offer, but if you go up to your max on the escalator, we'll just take yours, because they already kind of showed their cards of like how high they would go.
Right.
So I think since we didn't play ball and like help them escalate, their next phone call was like, hey, we've got this other offer. You're willing to go this high. If you do that, we'll go with your offer. So
What would have been if that was you and you were buying it? What would have been your max offer on that property? What did we write at?
We were at
7?
7. I think probably 725 would have been my max on that one.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And everybody's different too, just depending on how much it costs them to like, we don't even know what they were going to do on it. I mean, yeah, they could have been building a dadu. They could have just
Yeah.
been an investor making a make ready, rental,
Yeah.
who knows?
And that one, if it was a 5,000 square foot lot, a little bit bigger, I probably would have been more aggressive in terms of like pushing you in terms of like, hey, you've got to, go for this. For people listening in Seattle, you need a 3,200 square foot lot or bigger to build an ADU in the back. This lot was about 3,800 square feet. So it had enough room, but you would have taken up the entire kind of what's called floor area ratio, or the entire lot would have been kind of filled with structure. So you do lose a little bit of value on the back end when you don't have a backyard or any sort of outdoor space like that. Obviously, we're talking about $300,000 to $500,000 margins on these deals, so you're still making a nice return, but it's probably going to be more on the lower end of that range than the higher end if you don't have the yard and the outdoor space that kind of adds to the single family feel of the build.
How big a lot is yours?
It's about 5,000.
About 5,000.
Yeah.
Okay, and how long ago did you buy yours?
We bought ours in 2022. So we bought ours as a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, had an unfinished basement. So we finished out the basement, made it a 4-bed, 2-bath, and then in the backyard we built a DADU, so detached ADU, the next year.
How much money all in on that project?
Yeah, so it was, we bought it for 700. We put 150,000 into the front house to finish that basement. It appraised at 1.1 million. So we were able to essentially go to the bank and get a HELOC for a home equity line of credit for that $250,000 of equity that we were able to create. And then the ADU cost 350,000, probably closer to 400,000 after like the landscaping and all the exterior work that was done, dirt work. And then that appraised recently at 800,000. So
yeah,
yeah,
place is awesome. That was a great one. Looks good too.
Yeah,
just so well appointed.
Yeah.
Does it have a little bit of a backyard for both? It does. The dadu does, right?
Yeah, the dadu has like probably a couple hundred square feet. Basically, it's got a patio with pavers, and then it has the artificial turf if they have a dog or whatever, and it's all fenced in. And then we have a front yard. So like in the back, it's more of theirs, and then we have a private front yard with grass and patio and all that stuff. So,
is that garage yours in the back?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And I forgot. Does the dadu have a garage or no garage, or does
no,
it just have a
there's
parking
no dadu
pad?
on the garage. Just it's got 2 tandem parking spots. So like the dadu has the 2 spots basically tandem right next to it, and then next to that is kind of keeps the access to the existing garage for the single family.
Okay. And are you renting now the dadu?
Yeah. So It's kind of a cool story. When we were in the middle of building it, we were a little nervous because you've got this big structure going up in your neighborhood. You're worried about the neighbors thinking, it's, this monstrosity, all these people have lived here for 50 years. It's a pretty nice area. But one of the neighbors that we were actually worried about, his girlfriend or partner left a note on our car one day during construction. And she said, "Hey, I really like what you're doing there. If you don't have a renter already, call me. I'd be interested in renting it." So we called her back, and she was, she was interested. She had just retired from Microsoft about, a couple months earlier. And so we agreed, $3,500, no pets. She travels half the time, no kids. So single renter. So it worked out really well just without even having to market it.
Wow. That's fantastic. And that whole alleyway that was something I was noticing when I got there. And then we kind of toured around. But then after that, I was going through some alleyways. It's like now these alleyways are transforming into like little neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost looking, it looks better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do neighbors think that way, or you get like 80% like it, and there's obviously 20 that just think that it's a bad thing, all said and done?
Yeah. It's funny. Like, I would say 80/20 is probably a good ratio. You've got people that are like, times are changing. You have to change too, and just get used to it. And it's good for affordability. And um, the designs on these things actually, I think, helps a lot too, because they used to be like when these laws came out in like 2021, and they were originally like, they tell you what you can build, but then it's like without like really having an opportunity to design and practice the aesthetic or whatever. Originally, these things were popping up, and they were like boxes, right? They were just like, oh, you can put 1,000 square foot house in your backyard, and then architects were like, okay, let's just put a box back there and call it a day. But now we're like 3-4 years in, where they've got like the farmhouse cottages and all these different like really nice design features that make them look a lot nicer. So I think that goes a long way in helping people uh, look at it favorably because it looks a lot nicer. But what your comment reminded me of is how there's like the Nextdoor website and like Facebook, and like there's always like somebody in the neighborhood that's like, I don't know what they do all day.
Yeah.
They just kind of sit on there and
Complain about everything that's going on.
Look for stuff to get mad about.
Yeah.
And so some lady the other day was like, took a picture of like an ADU development, and she was like, look at this. Can someone tell me what's wrong with this picture? And then like you've got most of the comments like, I don't see anything. It's a new house. You should have seen what was there before. It was like 100-year-old house that was like a crack house, and now it's like it's going to be a new construction, nice home for your area. It's probably raising the value. And like other people are like, I'm still not sure what's wrong with this picture, but she's like, the people are just going back and forth, right? You've just got one side that never wants any change and would rather have the crack house there, as long as these horrible new developers or builders aren't involved. And then you've got the other people that they see opportunity, or they see that bad house being removed and all those people that came with it being removed, and safer neighborhood, but can't win them all, right?
You can't. I know, and it's one of those things too that is, we just go through it on a daily, weekly basis. It is that way. I was seeing something on Facebook about like a 7, like they're developing 7 townhouses off this street in Willow Glen, and everybody's like, oh, it's gonna change the neighborhood. It's changing everything. It's like, wait a minute. Right across the street is a mid-rise apartment complex. Then a couple houses, then a commercial building that's a business, like a dentist office, and then another apartment complex. And they're building it on a place that had a old beat up liquor store.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
They're building townhouses, 7 of them, not 100. And the debate, and then the debate turns into, well, we need more affordable housing. Well, is it really going to change affordable? Is it going to make it affordable?
Yeah.
That part I can see where that argument sits.
Yeah.
No, it's providing more housing. Let's just start there.
Mm-hmm.
The affordable housing scenario is another big topic in San Jose.
Yep.
They're building a bunch of mid-rises on the street on Bascom, which is a kind of a busier thoroughfare. It separates Willow Glen with Campbell and the neighborhoods. So you and it's a way to get to, the freeway and, restaurants, things like that.
Right.
And it has restaurants and old business, buildings. And now they're building a lot of, affordable housing there. But then the neighborhoods that are right behind it, those people are getting upset. Oh, it's going to bring more traffic, or now it's going to be more cars, even though they're building, underground parking structures.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're affordable housing for people that make under 130,000. It's like, it's 130,000. Do you want your teacher to live somewhere in your school district? And it's just this weird, and they're not built. It's a new, it's a mid-rise. It's a new building.
Yeah.
And people freak out. They just freak out. And it's not even really that close to them, but they just don't want it.
Yeah.
They don't want it here. They don't want it there. They want it somewhere where they don't see it.
Yeah.
Where it's out of sight, out of mind. Don't do it in my backyard. Don't even do it close. I don't even want to see the construction.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of,
That
I don't know.
make it sound like it's like a homeless shelter or something, but yeah.
Well, yeah. Even that scenario, they'll complain about that part too. But the only other alternative is you'll just get tents.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want? They tried to solve that scenario. There's a street in San Jose, kind of by downtown, West Santa Clara, that they took an old hotel,
yeah,
and turned it into housing, for people that are homeless. And
yeah,
I don't know if it's helped. They do have a lot of problems in that general neighborhood, just people stealing, doing, I don't know. It is what it is. They try, but
it's not easy.
It's not an easy
thing.
It's not an easy fix. So when I was out in Seattle, I had met with you and somebody else, and they were driving me around telling me about how we have a lot of issues with tents and stuff. I'm like, you guys don't have anything going on here. Was that pretty bad during COVID, and has that been resolved, and were they able to get people into housing?
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely has been bad during COVID. I think that escalated pretty significantly over that period. I did see an article in the Seattle Times that said like there's more unhoused or underhoused people in King County, which is like the broader Seattle area, than ever before. I think it's like, I don't want to say, it's either 16 or 60,000. I forget which one, but it's a huge number. They have been doing similar things like with the hotel conversions for affordable housing. They have like these mini house villages where they kind of have like little tiny house villages or whatever. But it's just it's a tough problem with, the intersection of drugs, affordability,
mental health.
So like, it's not a one size fits all solution.
No.
But it's tough. I mean, especially in cities, like Seattle, like San Jose, where, the home price, I think you were saying the home price in San Jose now is like around $2 million for like an average home.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you expect to happen to the, what used to be the middle class family, right? That, was just living in the neighborhood. And, it's, I mean, you can always say people can move further and further out, but, that's kind of what we're seeing the same effect in Seattle, and especially when things happen so quickly, right? This has all been, maybe San Jose is probably since the 90s, maybe longer, 80s. But Seattle is more like early 2000s with the Amazon effect. So when you've got,
really, that's when it started.
Yeah,
early 2000. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, even with, we've always had the Boeings and the Starbucks and the Microsofts, but that was kind of large. Like, it wasn't anything close to the number of employees and the number of people that have come with Amazon. And like what they've done to the housing prices and things of that nature. I would say, Microsoft was more like Redmond, Bellevue, like the east side. So right. Seattle wasn't necessarily as impacted by that. They've always been a little bit higher price point, probably more comparable to San Jose over there. But yeah, I would say, the last 20 years has been, we've seen easily like two doubles, right? So like, a house that was 500,000 in 2004 would be 2 million now.
Yeah, but it's still to me, your neighborhood.
Yeah.
I can compare your neighborhood to a neighborhood in Cambrian, and it's like half the price.
Mm-hmm.
Like, seriously. Yeah. When I see some of these, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this neighborhood. This neighborhood's so cute. And I don't know, I have to say it, I love that area.
Yeah.
The weather was better in Seattle and in Washington. I would move in a heartbeat. I really like it there.
Yeah, you can't.
I like everything about it. Was
You
that?
came at a good time, weather-wise.
Yes. Well, the first, yeah, you're right. But the first 2 days were really cold, and I'm like, ooh, like cold, like I could feel it in my bones. Like I'm like, oh, this is
Yeah,
this is cold. This is Seattle. And then those sunny days came, and I got to just see, because I drove around and saw these neighborhoods and how close it is to get to the mountains and just
hmm,
everything. I was like, man, this place is amazing. And aesthetically, it's pleasing too. I don't
yeah,
know. I like the style of homes, like you had said about the ADUs.
hmm,
Yes, they're packing things in. I mean, I'd just be driving and see look like a 3,000 square foot lot, and there's like 6 townhomes like straight up. I'm
yeah,
going, oh wow, how did they do that? I'm taking a video from the back, like how did they even get their car in? And I'd see it, but it all blends in really good with the old homes.
yeah,
I think it blends in good with these neighborhoods. I don't know, it makes sense.
yeah,
And I still try to envision that in, let's say, San Jose or some of the surrounding areas. I see it working in some areas and then not in others.
right.
It's just different layouts. And one, we don't have a lot of alleyways. That's a
Hmm.
big part of it right there. Some in downtown, but there really isn't any.
Yeah,
So that changes it up. But yeah, I like Seattle.
yeah. I think it's
Woo!
more of those like B's and C neighborhoods, right? Like even in Seattle, there's going to be the A neighborhoods where you know you're going to have where everybody on the block's like an attorney, or like everybody on the block has a estate or trust that they're going to fight back and never allow like a ADU on their street. But like the vast majority of like B, C neighborhoods, even if they don't have a alley or a corner lot, which is ideal for an ADU or DADU, so that the houses can kind of face different directions. Um, but those are really where I would see the opportunity. So in your neighborhood, those are the if you even have those, right? You got so
Yeah.
many in A neighborhoods, like probably 5 million. The B neighborhoods, 2 million. It's like at
Yeah.
some point, it's a little tough.
Well, I had to do a CMA for my mom's house, and so she's got a neighborhood, and it's called Vista Park, and
Mhm.
then right across the street called Branham, there's another development, and there's another one, and hers was always been the nicest one. Like we'd say the A, and then you got the B and the C,
Right.
and now people are coming into those areas and flipping houses and
Mm-hmm.
fixing them up, but they're going for like $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
These houses were like 500,000, back in like 2015. Like
Damn.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And I didn't even catch my radar because I wasn't, I hadn't shown any properties over there in years. And when I started seeing the comparables, I knew some of these streets. Some of my friends growing up lived over there. I'm like, oh my God, this house sold for 2 million. Like I'm freaking out, going, oh my God, this is crazy.
Yeah.
It's just nuts. Schools aren't good either. Like schools aren't good. You're if you're going there for schools, that's not going to be the case. You're going to private, or maybe you don't even care about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty interesting. And that just kind of shows you supply and demand and not building enough housing, where we end up.
Yeah. There's a whole argument about that around here too, with
Really?
people moving into like nicer areas with decent schools, not that great of schools, but a lot of people are doing private school, which is like reducing some of the investment into the public schools and kind of just uh, continues to that trend of public education kind of getting worse and worse because people are just not making the investment in it or supporting them. So
I'm seeing that firsthand in
yeah.
my parents' neighborhood.
Hmm.
Uh, the schools were decent, back in the 80s, and then they kind of fell off. And then you could just tell, people are moving on my parents' court.
Yeah.
All their kids go to a private school one way or another. Like I'd rather spend this amount of money on the house. Maybe they're priced out of the areas that have the good schools, and
Hmm.
that's another factor. And they're just weighing out. It's just a money thing. Like
Yeah.
I could buy a house for this, and then school's this. I'm saving whatever $40,000 a year and whatever they're doing. So it's kind of always a interesting kind of play.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so what about because
Yeah.
you're gonna have to be thinking about this soon. I didn't know this about, are the schools good over by your house?
Yeah. So the elementary school is really good. Um,
Is it?
it's weird because they're all the same school district. The elementary school is really good in terms of ratings. I'm not a parent yet. I'm just going off what I'm reading because expecting a baby girl in August. So we're like, trying to get educated here. Um, but yeah, the elementary school looks pretty good, and then the middle school for some reason is like got bad ratings, and then the high school got like pretty good ratings from a public school perspective. So I don't know what they're
Hmm.
doing in the middle school or how that works out,
Yeah.
but yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of common, actually.
Really
Well, that's what I see. Yes.
interesting.
Maybe you get, the elementary is amazing, the middle school is okay, and then the high school is a little bit better,
Interesting.
or it's just, yeah, that's a common. I think the school districts or neighborhoods you're moving into that have, good schools across the board are usually really pricey,
Yeah.
because you can keep your kid in a school from, elementary all the way to high school. That's a big deal, especially when they're the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school general areas,
Yeah.
same
For
areas,
sure.
so to speak. Definitely the pricing is much higher, but yeah, you're going to learn that one quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
When's your daughter? When's
August
your daughter
31st
due?
is the due date.
Cool.
So
How you doing with that? Excited?
good. Yeah, we just we went car shopping and picked up a new baby car SUV. So we're
Yeah.
excited about that. Got to start putting together the crib and baby room this weekend.
Wow,
Yeah,
it's getting going. That's cool.
yeah. So that'll be fun. We got to find you a deal before that though, before we get uh, on house arrest.
You
So
totally,
yeah,
dude. You're gonna be. That's okay. Your schedule will just adapt.
yeah,
You'll be nesting for a little bit. That's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty common. Speaking of deals, is it pretty the investors you deal with? How long does it typically take, give or take, for an investor to get into their first deal out there? Does it really
Um,
depend on what they're trying to do?
yeah. I mean, I would say a couple months. And I think the reason for that is, I would say it also depends on the investor. But if you're somebody that, let's say you bought a single family home, you want to get into an investment property, two kind of high net worth individuals, like that's kind of like the standard I work with a lot. Um, those people usually, we need to see a couple of these properties and then they need to realize like how quickly they go, right? Because sometimes you don't want to you can't really explain to people the situation until you've taken them through a couple of the scenarios, put in a couple offers. They kind of see how, what types of offers are being accepted, the types of contingencies that are being waived, and really how aggressive you need to be to get a deal like this in the Seattle market, which is I'm sure similar to where you're at. But kind of it probably takes a couple months to first of all go through all the paperwork, go through the evaluation, get people kind of educated on this is what we're looking for and this is why, this is what the process is going to look like for the next 12 to 18 months, from fixing up the front house, building the ADU. So I kind of do a lot of the A to Z walkthrough, get them comfortable, and then when we get out there in the market, it usually takes a couple offers to kind of go through, and then I would say within the first two or three, they'll usually get one within that time frame. So I would say a couple months from beginning to end is about common. Yeah,
That makes sense. Well,
you're there.
we can tell we were there. Yeah, we're there. But let's get on the full disclosure to everyone out there. I did make a pretty big mistake, and I think it's kind of a funny mistake that I made. Ian actually brought me a deal off market that made complete sense in all aspects. It was a corner lot, easy, no brainer. Could build the dadu. Front house need work. In a up and coming neighborhood. Another really big investor, Thatch, was buying over there too, so that gives it a little bit more of a stamp of approval. And I had it right in front of me. All I had to do is say yes, I want to buy it. And I had just met Ian, and so I'm playing this game of like, is this the right deal for the first one? Is he just passing this to me? What's wrong with it? I went through all these things that I think any investor maybe even a newer investor, even if the fact that I'm seasoned at buying investment properties, I still was second guessing myself. So then I let it slide. And then I went back to it because did I show up? Did I go to Seattle? I think I went to Seattle, and then I think I realized, okay, no, actually I do like this.
Yeah.
So I came back to Ian and was like, all right, I want to buy it. And at that point, Ian, understanding an opportunity, he decides to buy it. And he got it, and he's going to be developing it out and doing his thing. And so that was a big learning lesson. Like, sometimes you have to trust the process. You really have to have trust in your team out of state as well.
Mm-hmm.
Your agent, your contractor, your lender, your handyman, all the people on your team, they are going to make or break you. I always say this. And it wasn't, anything against Ian. I just didn't know Ian yet. But then I got out to him and I hung out with him for a day, drove around, and I get a little bit more of an understanding of, what we're going to do moving forward. And then the trust gets built, and
Right.
it just, it was one of those things. And then it made sense because it was a good deal, because you wouldn't have bought it if it wasn't a good deal.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll feel a little bit better going forward if I send you something, and I'll tell you usually, straight up, like, this is one I would buy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, we had that conversation.
Yeah.
I did tell you that too. I said, don't, you find something that makes sense. Don't beat around the bush. You say, yes, go for this one now. And because that's probably what I would do with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you were looking, or that anybody was looking in San Jose and we're looking at a deal, I would say yes or no.
Right.
Or here's going to be the issues. Here's how it can go. But then again, on the flip side, you've also mentioned that you're getting a little jaded by these deals as well, about how much money could be in one of them. We did walk that one property in, was it in Ballard? That neighborhood, Ballard?
Yep.
Okay. So your client bought it. That was a real true fixer-upper, full gut.
Yep.
They paid $7.
Yep.
For it?
It was $700 with an $8,000 seller credit. So it's about $692.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was a full gut.
Yep.
They were digging out the basement. It had a big backyard. Well, it had a bigger backyard. It had room for the front house to have its own backyard, and the dadu play to have its own backyard. It was on an alley. They had to dig out the basement. So they were doing a ton of work. So a ton of work, a lot of risk, but a lot of reward once it's all said and done. However, the neighborhood was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You had, 2-story farmhouses right across the street, 4 houses down, just a lot of development. You can just visually see it when you drove down the street. Like, okay, you find a fixer on this street, you're gonna knock it out of the park.
Right.
On top of it, so they bought it for $7.
Yeah.
How much were they doing? $300 for the full rehab of the main house in the basement? Was that
about
what I remember hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, so now they're at $1 million.
Yep.
Plus they got soft costs, carrying costs, all that good stuff, right?
Yep.
And they're going to be in that, doing that project in the front for.
I think they're going to be done. Last I heard, by the end of June. So
end of June.
But
when did they start?
I would say it was probably a 6 to 8 month project, and largely a lot of permits and things of that nature. This was a 1918 house, so like 100-year-old house, needed earthquake retrofit or seismic retrofit, all sorts of new electric, plumbing, basically everything that you could imagine, with the city also wanting it all brought up to code. So that added some delays, of course, but they're going to be all in about $1 million on it. It'll be worth 1.4 range on the front house alone.
Okay, this is let's stop right here.
Yep.
This is a big deal. This deal is like the home run hit right here.
Yep.
So all in for $1 million, probably a little bit more than that because of carrying costs and all that. So
probably another $100,000.
So, but yeah, so let's say 1-1. So they're making 3 off the main house.
Yep.
They can then do a refinance, take that equity or do an equity line of credit, and then throw it right at the dadu.
Right.
The dadu will take another year to build, 6 months for permits, right? And then another 6 to build. So they're in it for a year. But essentially, that piece of land is free. it's a free piece of land. They're just got to build it out.
Yep.
But now that 1,000 square foot dadu is worth 9.
Right.
9.
Yeah. Yeah. In that same location, like 4 doors down, uh, a builder did a very similar project, but he actually tore down the front house and he built a single family, an ADU,
Yeah.
and the DADU, same size lot and everything. And they sold the dadu for 920,000.
Okay. Whew.
So
And did you say they made? I don't know if it was that one, but somebody really didn't approach it correctly on that street as well, I guess, and still did good. I don't remember that conversation, but
yeah, I mean, anytime you're able to keep the front house, usually you're going to have lower risk and higher margin if you can just fix up that front house and then build the ADU. Because you can spend 2 years getting permits on the front house and the ADU, and then like with the holding costs and the cost of construction, and then how much those sell for, you're really not making too much more margin than you would have if you just fixed up the front house and either kept it or sold it. Um, just the way the numbers work out, your big money is usually going to be on the dadu. Uh, so
yeah,
so the more you can kind of do that faster with less carrying costs and then less time spent and less money wrapped into the front project, the quicker you kind of get to the good stuff, which is the dadu.
did they? I got a question. Did they pull permits on the dadu as concurrently with
Yeah,
the main house?
yeah. So they're working on that. They should have those uh, soon as well. So as soon as they're done with the front, they're gonna shift gears and move towards the back.
Yeah, that one was great. That one you can just tell visually too, when you get there, when you go to the property, like how much it makes sense just for the privacy of both houses. And I think even the main house
Yep.
has its own back. It just there's so much privacy that I think the value of the front house is going to be intact as well, even
Right.
more so than some of these plays.
That's true.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, that's one thing you see a lot in the comments of like, there's no way that you can split these two lots and then, have them be worth the same amount because you're losing the backyard. And that there
Yeah.
is an element of that. Definitely. It's generally like a 10% haircut on the value of the front house because you're kind of cannibalizing the backyard, right? So you're going to lose a little bit of that space. But like in mine, it appraised at 1.1 million with the full lot, and then 1.05 once I did the dadu in the back. So it was really only like 50 grand that they assigned the value towards the backyard. So it really wasn't a significant or a material amount um, that I think would surprise a lot of people.
And you spent how much on the dadu?
350, 375
Okay. And then what do you think that's worth?
at my place.
Yeah.
800 it appraised at.
So yeah, back to those jaded numbers.
Yeah,
When you're talking.
for sure.
Yeah, there's some definitely good home runs. Um, so besides being super busy and investing, like what do you like to do for hobbies? What are you into?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm training for a half marathon, so I've been doing a lot of running. See you out there running as well. Um,
Yeah.
Always been pretty active. Basketball, workout every morning, Monday through Friday. So just weights, cardio. Just kind of trying to stay active that way. A lot of walks or hikes. But in reality, like I love real estate so much that like that takes up a ton of my time. When I'm not working my 9 to 5, I'm usually looking at houses, evaluating properties, working with clients, and just spending time. I have my own properties that I manage, and then just always trying to find more deals, basically. So
It's an addiction.
it is.
It's a good addiction to have.
Could be worse.
Yeah, definitely. What have you learned about owning your own investment properties and manage them? What are the big things you've learned?
I mean, I actually I tell people stories about like my tenants and all the things that I, have to go through with, managing your own properties. So right now I manage 8 properties myself, which is about 20 units. And then we have a 9 unit that we basically anything over 5 units we outsource to like a manager. Um, just from my experience, like a 1 to 4 unit property, it's you automate the billing or the rent collection through property management software. You can do work orders and all that online. So the maintenance and things of that nature just don't really take as much time. It's not really worth. It goes back to the story or what we were talking about earlier. Is like if you get a property manager, you still have to manage the property manager, right? It's not just gonna be
Yes,
perfect.
100%.
Um, so um, from my perspective, the 1 to 4 unit properties, I think it's great, especially as you're starting out, to just manage those yourself and learn how to be a landlord, kind of manage those relationships. Um, but I would say, the biggest thing I've learned is just if you take care of your tenants, they don't want to move unless there's something that they really need to for a job or a family situation. But in general, the vast majority of people hate moving, so as long as you're taking care of them, you're not nickel and diming them every single time the lease is up, like trying to max out as much as you can get from them. I've found that playing the long game, just taking care of people and keeping rents a little bit below market, responding to maintenance requests, within 24 hours, whatever you can do, um, and just kind of, having that respect for people, giving them a clean place to live. Um, Over time, I think that has really allowed me to scale my portfolio much faster because I don't really have very many turnovers that take up a lot of time. I'm able to kind of, automate a lot of those systems. And yeah, I've just had a lot of really good tenants that have stayed with me now, many of them over 10 years. Um, and yeah, I think that's the main thing. It's
It's
just,
good.
taking care of people, treating people with respect, and not trying to nickel and dime people. I did a post the other day. It was like,
I saw
you
that.
do like, on these, like $1 million fourplex was the example. And like a lot of people would say, hey, I'm going to raise rent on these 4 people by $50 a month
I know,
every
it's like
year. And
ridiculous.
it's like, if you think about it long term, if that makes you have one turnover, that could cost you 5 or 10 grand renovating that unit, having the vacancies, marketing it, getting it rented, and you're all doing that for $50. When that's $50 a month would be 400 per the whole building, so that's $4,800 more a year. But if you had one turnover, that offsets your entire 5 grand that you increase the rent on. So like you just have to weigh that pros and cons of like the time that you have invested, or the time, peace of mind, the time that you have available to deal with it, and then also the appreciation factor because you know in Seattle last year, for instance, we had 12% appreciation, so that's 120,000 on that same building when I just left rents the same instead of and I didn't have any turnover. So you just kind of
Yeah,
got to play the long game, I think, and evaluate whether it makes sense. Sometimes you're way under market, and you got to think about that too. But ultimately, I think just playing the long game, taking care of people, and taking care of your properties is going to be uh, a much better strategy than trying to raise rent every year just because you can.
absolutely. And it almost puts you in a position to potentially lose a really good tenant
Oh, for
and then
sure,
getting a really bad one too. Like
totally.
it can backfire you on you in different ways, which is, sometimes you take that risk on and it just doesn't pan out. Next, you're like, now you're losing money
Yeah,
on it. So
yeah.
it's kind
I've
of one of
found
those
that like on
things.
the higher end range too, like when you really try to like get top dollar for a unit, you're much more likely to have that person stay for like a year or two than like if you have like a little bit more affordable price point where people stay 3 to 5 years or longer. Um,
Yeah, they
yeah,
know they got a good deal and they're like and it's almost like they're working with you and vice versa.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, we got a win-win here. Let's keep it going this way.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you jumping on today. Maybe we can do we'll do a second one once we get the
Yeah, we'll
contract.
do a deal overview and we'll walk through the
We'll do a
numbers
deal
on. Yeah.
overview. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. Where can the audience find you?
I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Ian Love. My handle is Ian Loves Real Estate. So yeah, find me on there. Happy to answer any
Cool.
questions. Providing free game every day. So
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for joining today, buddy. I appreciate
yeah,
it. And I'll be talking to you
I'll talk to you soon.
later on today.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thank you for tuning into our show, where we hope you found inspiration and gained valuable insights. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to stay updated on our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with others who might benefit from it. We appreciate your support and look forward to bringing you more candid conversations and breakthrough moments in the future. Until next time, take care and keep exploring new ideas and strategies.